we're going to talk about our training agenda today. We're going to talk about some Hub basics. We're going to talk about some reporting considerations, how to submit reports in EVP, and how to find or verify Hub vendors. And our basics are that state policy encourages the use of historically underutilized businesses in the purchases of goods and services. And reporting covers purchases for term contracts and open market contracts in the current fiscal year. And they're purchases from non-governmental entities that count toward total purchases. And only firms certified by the Hub office count towards Hub participation. And reports are submitted on a quarterly basis. So that's the basics of everything. There are two types of reporting. Purchases of goods and services is what we're covering today, and purchases of construction is not covered by this webinar. If you're a local government, a school system, then you would be using the HubSco system for construction. We're not covering that today. We had a training about a week or so ago on that, and that reporting period for Q1 is already over. So, if you need to know about that, you can let us know, but that's not what we're going to be covering today. We do want to do a brief overview of the Hub office, and we are the Office for Historically Underutilized Businesses. We promote diversity and inclusion in state government procurement and contracting. Our main roles are Hub certification, NCSBE certification, that's the North Carolina Small Business Enterprise certification, advocacy and business development services, compliance and reporting, which is basically what this is covering, as well as Minority Business Development Agency Business Center. There should be a center at the end of that. It might be hidden behind that picture. But that's a grant from the U.S. Department of Commerce that we have, a 5-year grant, and I think we're in year 4 right now, to work with to work with firms that are already established and to help them grow, get to the next level, and increase profitability with a slant towards federal procurement and international exports as well. So just talking briefly, we may have some folks on the call who are new to this process. And if you are, that's great. That's fine. I'm very glad you're here. And if you would like us to go into more detail on anything, let us know. We do know that we have some folks who are a little bit more experienced on the call as well. So we're going to go over this very briefly. So what is a Hub certified vendor? It's based on general statute. It's 51% ownership and daily management and control by individuals in Hub certification categories. So it's a private company that's the majority of the company is owned by individuals in the categories that are listed below, which are identified in general statute in this way. So that's why we use these terms: Black, Hispanic, Asian American, American Indian, female, disabled, and disadvantaged. And there's a new certification category called Employee Stock Ownership Plan. Nobody's yet been certified under that, but it's a slightly different requirement there. So for everything but ESOP, the requirement criteria are ownership and control of the business. Employee stock ownership plans, it is based on plan participants that meet these other criteria. So if the plan participants are Black, Hispanic, Asian American, American Indian, et cetera, then they could count towards 51% of that employee stock ownership plan company ownership towards meeting the certification requirement. We do have, for goods and services, a couple of self-identified categories, which are disabled business enterprise and nonprofit work centers for the blind and severely disabled. These are not Hub certification categories. They're, again, self-identified in the electronic vendor portal system, and we capture them. General statute directs us to capture them, but they're not counted as Hub dollars for Hub participation. They're nonprofits, so there's really not ownership that can be assigned to individuals there. Please note that minority is not a certification category. The certification categories that fall under that minority uh, classification would be Black, Hispanic, Asian American, and American Indian. So also, in order to be counted towards hub spending, firms must be hub certified. Okay, so that's not really supposed to say placeholder. Sorry. But we did want to acknowledge that we've got a bunch of organizations, a lot of school systems, universities, community colleges that have been impacted by Hurricane Helene. And we have probably 300 or so hub vendors in these disaster declared counties. So we want to make sure that they know and you know that we are paying attention to that. If you are in that area, and I spoke with somebody at a community college in, I think, Mitchell County yesterday. If you are not able to report by October 30th, that's okay. We're gonna, not be on your case for reporting. You've got some really important things that you're working on there to make sure that you and your folks that you care for are safe. So we understand if there's some delay in that. If the person that I talked to yesterday said, I'm fine doing it. We had the electricity. It gave me some sense of normalcy to do it. And I was like, that okay, good. But we just want to make sure that people in that area understand that if they have an inability to get to it, we get that. And we're not going to be all over your email box trying to get you to submit reports on that. Also want to note that we have our MedWeek event coming up. I don't think I can highlight this but the link is right here for registering. In this circle, there's a white text on my screen. It might not be white in the PDF, but October 31st at the McKimmon Center in Raleigh from 9 a.m. to 4:30 is going to be our Minority Enterprise Development Week celebration. So we hope that anybody who is local is able to register and attend. There's no cost to attend, and we will have the ability to have networking going on, and they're working on a really good program for the event. So hopefully everybody who is able to come can come. Just wanted to mention we already kind of saw this map briefly, but this is our map across the state of where hub vendors are located. The majority of them are in the urban areas, but we do have vendors all over the place. We do have a few counties where we don't have any certifications in there at all, and we are actively looking to do more rural outreach and try to increase the number of vendors in rural areas. We have heard from particularly school systems where they're like, I would love to have a hub vendor do my work. I would love any vendor to bid on my work. We can't get anybody local to do it. We have to go out to, like, if they're in Pasquotank, going up to Virginia Beach and getting people to come down from out of state to do that work. So we do want to try to reach out to rural communities, make sure we understand capacity and what businesses are there that could be eligible for certification, and help them understand the process and get certified. A little bit of legislative background on the goods and services portion. There is a goal of 10% of spending with hub vendors that is listed in Executive Order 25. The General Statute 14348 is the state policy to encourage the use of small and historically underutilized businesses, and it also includes the reporting requirements. And General Statute 143-128.4 defines historically underutilized business. That new ESOP definition is not quite there yet. It was in the state budget bill that was revised over the summer. And then, so it will show up eventually. It's not there in 143, 128.4 yet. Department of Administration also certifies hubs and maintains the database, and the hub office is the division within the department that does that. And then it also states in that general statute that only certified hubs count towards minority business participation. So a little bit about who reports on goods and services spending. We've got 11, now 12 cabinet agencies, because State Bureau of Investigation is now a cabinet agency. And we've got 9 Council of State agencies, 9 support agencies, 19 public universities and university institutions, 58 community colleges, 115 school systems, and about 6 nonprofits that report. So goods and services spending for fiscal year 22-23, we were at $10 billion total spend, and $716 million with hub vendors. And so that percentage of spending was 6.59%. So we have yet to actually achieve our 10% goal as a state for hub participation. We have been increasing over time, and there are certainly agencies that have achieved 10% individually, but as a state, we haven't quite gotten there. For fiscal year 23-24, it's a little less clear. Normally, on any other given year, we would have the final numbers for you at this point. But we've got an issue there was a switchover from NCAS to NCFS, and it really threw our hub reporting system out of whack because that used NCAS data, and now it had to learn how to use NCFS data. I'll talk about that in a little bit. But the data that we do have is that we've got $8 billion in total spending reported so far, and $594 million of spending with hub vendors. So right now, our spending with hub vendors is at 7.08. We're missing about 25 or so state agencies, about 3/4 worth of their data because of that NCFS issue I mentioned. So we're expecting to see probably at least, $1 billion or $2 more in total spending, and then probably several hundred million in hub spending as well. So we'll see what that does to our percentage. I'm going to be guardedly optimistic on what it's going to do, but we're hoping that we'll be able to get those numbers pulled in sometime soon. And again, only certified hubs count toward that hub dollar and hub percentage. Looking at our due dates, these really do not change from quarter to quarter or year to year, although we have some instances like during COVID, we had some need to extend out some due dates, as well as right now for the agencies using Hub SRS. They're not required to submit quite yet on this calendar because they don't have the ability to pull the data that they need to. And also for those entities that are in those hurricane disaster counties, we're not going to hold them to the October 30th due date for Q1, which covers July through September. If they're able to get those reports in, that's fabulous. We're just going to try not to reach out to them over and over by email or phone saying, hey, where's your report? But the reports are due 30 days after the quarter ends. So that's October 30th for Q1, January 30th for Q2, April 30th for Q3, and July 30th for Q4. And we do send reminders about the due dates by email each month, or not each month, each quarter. So everybody should receive those emails. They are not automated at this time. They're either sent out by Leslie Thomas or myself. So what's reported in the goods and services reporting quarterly reports? We look at term contract spending, through state term contracts, open market purchases, non-governmental entities, and actual payments. So we're not looking at, hey, we have a 3-year PO and it's a $300,000 PO over 3 years, so we put in $300,000. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for actual payments out the door, money transferred from the agency to the vendor. So we're looking at actual payments there. And that could be by purchase order, direct payments, P-card. P-card is the most challenging of those to capture. There's not a great link up between the P-card system and certification information about hubs. So you can find state term contracts on the North Carolina Purchasing Contract website. So some of those are mandatory, some of those are convenience, and some of those, if they are mandatory, they may apply to some state agencies, but not necessarily local governments. But it is definitely a good way of getting value for what you need. And there are some hub vendors on the list, particularly air filters, office supplies. I think there are some vendors on the furniture contract, as well as some others as well. And so here, yeah, so here's the state term contract link to that. This is what it looks like when you go in and click on that link. You'll see the list of the different state term contracts, the beginning date, ending date, whether they're mandatory or convenience. And as I mentioned before, we have hub vendors in several of those contracts, including air filters, condoms, diesel, durable medical equipment, microscopes, office supplies, veterinary supply equipment, internal auditing, and pharmaceutical return goods. So I do think there is some additional other ones as well. Some examples of goods and services items that would be captured that are not on term contract are commodities. These are tangible goods, physical things you can lift up, pick up, move around. Supplies, equipment, furniture, computers or peripherals, vehicles, medical supplies, or services, which might include vehicle maintenance, cleaning, janitorial, landscape, information technology, software, medical care, legal. And in some of those services, there may be an aspect of what you're provided that's physical. Like if your janitorial contract includes that they provide paper towels or, cleaning equipment or cleaning supplies. It's really a service. They're keeping the place clean for you. There's an aspect of it that might be commodity based, but for the majority of it, it's the service that you're paying for. And when we look at state term contract versus commodity or services, if it's in state term contract, that's the only place we count it. We don't also count what was done as a commodity or a service. So a service or a commodity would not be on state term contract, but there could be state term contracts that have service or commodity related things in them. You just don't count them in both places. So what's not included? We don't count money spent with other governmental entities. So if you're spending money to a municipality, university, community college, county, sheriff's department, jail, correction enterprises, or a vendor that's mandated by General Assembly or some other rule in your procurement process, then you don't count that in your total amount. We also don't count personal services. We don't count salaries, wages, benefits, those kinds of things, or aid and public assistance, reserves, or intergovernmental transfers or transactions. NCFS expenditure account code exclusions. NCFS, again, is the North Carolina financial system that last year in 2023, it replaced the North Carolina accounting system. And some of the items that are in NCFS that we do not count towards hub spend, either in the total or the hub amount, is workshop or conference expenses or registration fees. So if somebody's going off to a conference, you don't have to account for the dollars that you spent to send them to that conference. Some hospital provided services, rent or lease agreements, some certain things, um, electrical services like water or sewer, internet service provider charges or cable TV, inmate tuition, prescription drugs, legal settlements, court costs, pension fund payments, and debt service payments are all things that we would not count. You would not include them in your total amount. Um, Subcontractor spending can be captured and it's encouraged in that Executive Order 25. So tracking utilization of goods and services contractors, sometimes you'll hear it called second tier or multi-tier. That's encouraged. If you're doing that, you do need to make sure that you capture it in the same way as you would regular hub spending if you're spending directly with a hub vendor. So you need to know the date of the purchase, the type of the purchase, whether it was a state term contract, commodity or service, likely to be commodity or service, and verification that they were hub certified at the time of the payment, and that you know what hub category those subcontractors fall under. The hub office does email a quarterly report of the Computer Aid Incorporated IT staffing subcontractor spending to state agencies and any community colleges that use that contract. So if we see anybody on that contract that might be reporting for goods and services, we will send them that report. And we typically will send it to all the state agencies so they can all see, what their level of spending on that IT short-term staffing contract was and how much of it was hub spending. So this is an example of what that looks like. We have received the quarter one CAI data and it's being processed at this point. So we'll list, there will be more than this in the spreadsheet that we send out, but it will list the department, the total spend, the hub spend, and then the hub percentage. And that's just for your information. It's interesting to see, wow, Health and Human Services got 18.7% of their CAI spend with hub vendors. But what you really need to know for the reporting is in the section that has BHA, that's Black, Hispanic, Asian American, American Indian, female. Those are the acronyms for those hub categories. So you would need to add these values to what you already have in EVP when you're reporting. You don't add the total in because that's already captured as spending with CAI. You would just add in the additional items that show up in red under these different categories, and you would put them under services. So when you go into EVP, you would add these to your services line in those specific hub categories where you have some spending. And we try to make it obvious who had spending by making the values bold and red. So it's fairly easy for you to pick out, oh, that's how much spending I need to add for hub to my report because of this. So this is basically a tier 2 spending situation, and other organizations can do something similar to this. I don't know that anybody actually has yet, but in EVP, there is the ability for primes to go in and enter subcontract data in there. We're still working out how we would get that information out. We've seen some of it and it's, a start, but it doesn't necessarily give us everything that we need quite yet. So we're still working on that. Any questions at this point? I've kind of been talking and I haven't really been paying attention to the chat to see if anybody asked any questions.
We currently don't have any questions in the chat, but
Okay.
everyone, you're welcome to come off of mute or type your questions in the chat as well.
And I may not have said it yet, but I do appreciate it when people ask questions, and I don't mind being interrupted. I would much rather you get your questions answered and we have a discussion rather than you listen to me. I've been told that my voice can help put people to sleep. So I want to make sure that people get what they need and are still conscious as we're going through it. All right. So we'll move on to reporting hub spend. And we'll look at a little bit about data sources. Community colleges use e-procurement and Colleague. I think there might be some move underfoot for some updates to Colleague, but I don't think that they're out there yet. School systems typically use Link or Sunpack. There are some exceptions to that. Some people have their own systems or a different system, and some people use the DPI, Department of Public Instruction financial system upgrade organizations. There were a number of different ones there. If you are in that situation where you're going through the financial system upgrades with DPI, please make sure that the companies you're working with understand your need for being able to pull data out of your system for the hub report and how the hub report is set up so that you don't have to go back to them later on and struggle to get the data out of your system. Public universities, their systems vary. They may be Argos or Banner or PeopleSoft or WebFocus. So there's not as much consistency there in terms of what those reports would look like and how you would pull them for the universities. Nonprofits, their systems will vary, but P-card will not be applicable to them because they don't have the ability to use a P-card. State agencies, DOT, and North Carolina Ports Authority use an SAP system. So they're not impacted by the NCAS, NCFS situation as far as I'm aware. North Carolina Education Lottery uses Microsoft Dynamics, again, not impacted by the NCFS changeover, but all other state agencies use the Hub Spending Report System, SRS, and that new version using NCFS payment data is coming soon. We're hoping that users of that system will be able to start using it for testing by Friday, and that will be the production version. But we're going to hold off on transferring the data from SRS to EVP until those users have had a chance to look at it and let us know if they see anything weird that we need to figure out and back up, because we don't want to transfer incorrect data from one system to another and then have to go back and correct it. So we want to give people the opportunity to see that, identify it, and if we need to, fix it. P-card purchases, any entity that can use P-cards can get their information out of Bank of America's work system. There might be other ways of getting P-card information. I'm not exactly an expert on getting that information. It is particularly challenging to identify hub spend there, and it can be very time consuming. I think that is one of the big lifts that I hope that we can get worked on in the next couple of years to try to make that easier to get that information. Colleague for community colleges, the commodity codes really do matter in there. So the XHUR report depends on purchases being put in the right category so that it's identified as a term contract, commodity, or service contract. And P-card, again, it's not currently supported in Colleague, and that data would come from Works. Here's what the XHUR report looks like. This is a couple years old, but it was very graciously provided by Wake Tech. They gave us some screenshots there. So it breaks out the spending by term contract, service contracts, and commodities, and that it also has the ability to do a detailed list of vouchers by hub category. Link, again, this is used by many school systems. This guidance was provided by Kelly Elliott of Surrey County Schools using Link version 6. Prior to this, we had very minimal screenshots that we could share with you, but she shared the use that she uses the report builder under the reports tab in fund management to select the desired columns for the report, and that budget analysis works in the same way, but it has all kinds of columns in the report that you don't need for hub reporting, and you can create a report for hub services and a separate report for hub supplies. So again, I don't use this system, so I can't answer a lot of questions on this, but hopefully for the Link folks, this will make some sense when they're looking at that. And in addition, there's creating a report for hub supplies. So that is what the hub supplies report looks like in Link. So this was using Link version 6. There might be different versions out there. They run a purchases category report under reports in, I guess, FM. I'm not sure if that means fiscal management, but it might. And then they enter the quarter dates, select all for the purchase category and active for hub status. And this will give you a hub report for EVP. Hopefully that will help folks out who use Link. Here is SunPack. This is again used by school systems. There is a hub report instruction document available. It's many years old. I want to say it's from fiscal year 15, 16 or thereabouts. I don't know that there's been major changes to it. If there have been, that'd be great to know, but it's recommended that you report based on invoices rather than purchases. And SunPack does have the ability to upload the hub tax info to update the hub status and ethnic code. That I probably need to take that bullet out. We recently changed the hub tax ID file. It is still a hub file download, but to protect the privacy of the vendors, it no longer uses the tax ID because some of those tax IDs are social security numbers and we can't identify which is which. So we are using now the electronic vendor portal company number, as well as our regular ethnic code there. And there's still some technical challenges to work out with that, and making sure that that can be used by the school systems. The report layout for SunPack is very similar to the EVP hub statistics form. There might be a couple of items that are a little bit different when you log into EVP versus this. I believe socially, so that I think disadvantaged will come before disabled business enterprise and nonprofit work centers in EVP. So I think that is a little bit different. So you do need to pay attention to that. You can't just say, here are all the numbers. I'm just going to type in the numbers and hit enter and keep going down. You do have to pay attention a little bit to the category that you're entering that data in. Nonprofits are assigned to the support agencies category, and they only will report on the allocation that they received from the General Assembly. And they report on commodities and services, but not on state term contracts because they're not eligible to use those contracts. The hub spending report system we've mentioned a couple times in here. There's 25 or so state agencies and one university that uses the hub spending report system, and it's designed so the data is typically available 10 days after the month or the quarter ends. So that's our plan for when the production version gets back online. It captures actual spend from the North Carolina financial system and for direct payments and purchase orders that ran through e-procurement. And it has summaries that are available by quarter and month. They can, those agencies can see what their PO spend was and the direct payments were, and total amounts in those categories, as well as the hub spend for direct payments versus PO spend. There's also detailed data by PO line item available, including the hub vendor and hub status, and a number of other items like commodity code. If it was a PO purchase, that will be in there as well. Reports are available to track spending with North Carolina small business enterprises as well. That's not required for reporting for quarterly spending, just the hub dollars are. The SRS update, I think I've already mentioned this. There was a transition from NCAS to NCFS. It's impacting e-procurement. Well, I think they've resolved the e-procurement issue, and now we're almost ready to roll out the new hub SRS for those agencies. We have done user acceptance testing. We did a couple of rounds internally, and we want to be able to get the actual hub SRS users to be able to test it before that data is imported into EVP. So I'm hoping that next week the SRS users will be able to go through and check out SRS for their own agencies. Again, they will not be held to the October 30th, 2024 due date for submitting Q1 data. We are hoping to get their Q2, Q3, and Q4 data as well, and having to get all that done as well as Q1. That's basically 4 quarters worth of reports to get in, and that does not seem like a reasonable thing to expect them to get the report in at the regular due date. So which agencies use hub SRS? Cabinet agencies, DOA, Adult Correction, Commerce, Environmental Quality, Health and Human Services, Information Technology, Military and Veterans Affairs, Natural and Cultural Resources, Public Safety, Revenue. Those are all the cabinet agencies. DOT is a cabinet agency, but they don't use SRS, so they're not on that list. Council of State, Agriculture and Consumer Services, Insurance, Justice, Labor, Public Instruction, Treasurer, Auditor, Lieutenant Governor, Secretary of State. They all use SRS. And there are some agencies that DOA takes care of. So some agencies on here may be handled by DOA. The support agencies include Board of Elections, Community College System Office, the General Assembly, Administrative Hearings, the Office of the Governor, State Controller, Wildlife Resources Commission, and the university that uses it is the School of Science and Math. So I guess, I don't know if everybody saw that phone call that just came in, but I'll call them back later on. I want to talk about EVP a little bit, and there's a public facing side of it, and that's where vendors can go in and register to say, I want to do business with the state, as well as I want to get certified either as a hub or as an NCSBE. They can also go in and identify the commodity codes that should be listed on the public site, as well as emails that they want to receive for solicitations that come out. And this is also a place for them to go and browse solicitations so they can take a look at what solicitations are out there. It's a pretty neat interface, and we've learned how to use it a little better, and it's got a keyword feature that works reasonably well. One of the neat things about it is that vendors can go in there and look at closed solicitations, and they can see who actually submitted a bid, and in some cases, not in all cases, they'll be able to see the dollar amount of the bid that were submitted. Browsing vendors is where you would go if you're looking for vendors, whether you're looking for hub vendors or not. There used to be multiple different searches, but now there's just the one. And we've made some improvements to it over time, and hopefully we'll continue with that. And we've done a few training sessions on how to use that search, but we'll probably continue those or pick them back up because we had been doing them almost monthly, and we kind of got off track on that. So what is needed to access EVP Hub Stats? Hub Stats is where you will go to actually submit your Hub quarterly goods and services report. So for one thing, you need a valid NCID. It can only have one email address associated with it, and it must be set up as a user type of either a state employee or a local employee, and it must be active. It can't be locked in order for it to work. I think it's been improving over time. There were some folks who were having troubles getting into EVP, and we had a workaround for that. So if you are unable to get into EVP, first off, let Leslie and I know that you're having trouble getting into EVP. And if we can't work out a way to do that, we'll provide a spreadsheet for you that you can fill out, and then we, Leslie or I, can go in and copy what you sent to us and put it in your report. We really don't want to do that. We really want you to be able to do it yourself, because it puts you in a state of having to depend on us doing it right. And sometimes people make mistakes, and we don't want to be responsible for mistakes. We want people to be able to feel confident that they went in and they entered the data and they saw it and they submitted it themselves. So we do try to, when we need to enter it ourselves, we will try to send out a notice that says, "Hey, it's been submitted. Here's what it looks like," to those folks who have to do that. Agency NCID administrators can set up NCIDs. If you're not sure who that is, you can click on this link and it'll go to the administrator directory. As far as I can tell, it does not have email addresses on that list. It just has phone numbers. I think that's intentional on DIT's part, because they don't want people spamming those email addresses. So you have to actually call them to say, "Hey, I need an NCID." To find the delegated NCID administrator for your agency, these are direct links. So if you're a school system, click the local education agency link. State agencies, click that link. Counties, including community colleges, would click the county link to get that information. And in order to get access to HubStats, in addition to the NCID, you need to have your authorized purchasing officer submit a completed EVP user maintenance form request. That's on PNC's website, but the link is listed right here. That's not a form that the Hub office manages. We have a role in it, in that if somebody says they want HubStats or they want the access to the Hub file, then we are notified of that, and we have to give authorization before PNC turns that access on. So again, if you don't contact us directly to say, "Hey, I need EVP access," I mean, you can if you want to. We'll direct you to this form. But the form is required by PNC. We cannot just go ahead and tell PNC these people need to have access. As part of their process, they need that form filled out. So you need to select the Hub Statistics user in order to report on goods and services in EVP. Here is the link to EVP to get to HubStats. So once you get notified that you've got access to it, you should receive an email that actually has this link, and you would click on it, enter your email address associated with your NCID, and log in. So when it comes to asking for the ID, it wants your email address. It doesn't actually want your NCID. And then you'll sign in. If instructed, you may need to authenticate your access. We're using multi-factor authentication these days, so it's to protect us from people who shouldn't be getting in. The EVP dashboard for your organization will appear on the screen. And so this over here, this on the left, this is, pick your account. So that would be me. I would pick my account and then I would enter my password here. And then I would get a text that says, hey, here's the code. And then I'd have to enter the code in as well. So I'm going to pause super quick here and ask Leslie Thomas. I think you may have access to pulling the attendance report. If you would not mind doing that, I would appreciate it. I think you're the one who set up the event, so you're able to do that, but I don't think I am. So thank you for letting me digress, and back to the show. So for EVP login troubleshooting, if you're unable to log in, again, contact your NCID administrator, make sure the account's not locked and the user type is set as either a state employee or local employee. If that's still a problem, then reach out to this email, pc.systemsupport, to ensure your access to HubStats has been granted, and provide any screenshots of error messages you receive. And if that doesn't work, if they're like, I don't know, you look like you should be working in our system, then I would suggest calling the NCIDIT help desk at 919-754-6000. And if possible, provide any screenshots of any error messages received if they request that. Okay, so some training resources. There are instructions that can be found at this link for goods and services reporting. And there are a number of different training materials available related to EVP for state procurement users, like posting solicitations in EVP, viewing bids that you've posted, entering bid tabulations and awards, contract extensions, hub goods and services reporting, and searching for registered vendors. Those are all good training materials that you can use. We have some additional tips when it comes to searching for registered vendors that we'll hopefully be able to get to. But here are the basics when it comes to EVP data entry. So when you're entering data, only enter whole numbers. So don't give us $1,050.25. Round it to 1,050. If it was 1,050.75, you would round it up to 1,051. So anything 50 cents and above, round it up. Anything less than 50 cents, round it down. Spending for disabled business enterprise and nonprofit work centers and blind for the blind and severely disabled are captured on the report. However, those values are not added to the hub spend for achieving the 10% goal. We do report it on our annual report, but again, it doesn't count towards the hub participation percentage. Once you log in, you'll find your hub statistics app on the menu at the left side of the screen. In my case, it's all the way down here at the bottom. Click on that, and you should be able to see all of your quarterly reports that are available to you. You may see more than one fiscal year's worth, but you want to make sure that you're looking at the most recent quarter. If you're reporting on quarter one for fiscal year 24-25, you would look at fiscal year 25, and then you would search for quarter one. So you probably don't have to look too hard, because so far we should only have 5 or 6 quarterly reports in there for any agency. So you shouldn't have to try too hard to find the right report to click on. But once you do that, click on the quarter that you want to go into, and it might make sense to just say, I'm just going to click on fourth quarter here, if that's what you're trying to enter, to do that. Don't click on your department name. It will open a different screen. If you're trying to enter data, you don't want to click on your organization name. You want to click on another part of the row that's related to that quarter. Once you click on that row, it'll open up the report. It'll show your organization name up at the top several times, actually, and it'll show you what quarter that you're entering data for. At the top, there'll be a save button, save and close and approve. If you start working on something and you need to step away, or you don't have all the data that you need, go ahead and save it, and then you could close EVP, come back to EVP, open it up and your data should still be there. You can click save and close, and if you click save, it'll just stay there on your screen. But if you hit save and close, it'll close that report. If you're all done with entering all your data, you would click approve. And then on this screen where it says approved by, your name would show up in this little field to the right of that, and the date that you do it and the time that you do it will show up here as well. So it will date and timestamp when you actually click approve. So anything with a lock symbol next to it is not something you can edit. So for instance, fiscal year 2024 has got a lock next to it. You can't change that. Quarter, 4th, April 1 to June 30th, you can't change that. And also here, these fields are blank right now, but you can't enter data in them because these are formulas and it counts information that you enter in under some of the screens that I'm going to show you next. But these locked things will say, it will add up all your total amount of spending, whether it was hub or not, and then it'll add up all your hub spending, and then it'll calculate the percentage. Okay, so here is, if you scroll down just a little bit from what we were just seeing, you'll see the term contract section, and it will say term contract purchases, hub and non-hub up here. That's where you enter in your amount for term contracts. If you spent $1 million on term contracts, you would enter in $1 million there, regardless of whether it was with a hub vendor or not. But then if you spent like $100,000 with an Asian American firm under that term contract, you would enter $100,000 here for Asian American. If you didn't have any other hub spend, it will eventually calculate down here. It'll add up all the dollars in these hub categories and add it right here. It won't do it until you save it or you are finished with everything. So if you want to see it as you're going along, you can hit save and it will add it up and it'll do the calculation up at the top. You'll notice here we've got Black, Hispanic, Asian American, American Indian, female, disabled owned, and socially and economically disadvantaged as the categories. And then it adds up those as the hub values. And then disabled business enterprise and nonprofit work center are down below. So we still capture those dollars, and that's where they would go. And then commodities and services screens, they're identical, except that this is just talking about commodities. And these are all on the same screen. You just scroll down to get to the different sections. You have the commodity purchases for hub and non-hub, and then it adds up all the commodity hub spend there. And then for services, again, it's with services hub and non-hub, and then services purchases for hub, it'll count those up. So I'm kind of going through this kind of quickly. If anybody has any questions as we're going through, or you're like, I don't really get what you're saying, let me know that. We actually could do a quick demonstration on it, but I think we're, well, let's just keep going. If somebody wants to see that, we'll try to see if we can work that in. So if you have entered in all your information and you're confident that it's ready to go, you would click this approve button up here. It's got that little green check circle right next to it. So you would click that and it would show that you approved it on this date. If you need to go in and make edits, you can do that. You can come back to this report and make changes to it and then approve it again. And it will show, you know, who approved it. If there's a second person in your organization who was like, oh, that person's on vacation, but I know that there's this change, they have to go in and change it, their name will show up as approved by, and the date that they approve it will show up here. There is an audit trail here so that we can go back in and say, okay, who submitted the first report, who submitted the next report, if we need to do that. That has come in handy a couple times this past year. So it's something that we can access if we need to. Okay. So I say this is a poll question. Leslie, did we have a poll available and ready to go for this? Oh, it looks like we do. So if you can see the poll, go ahead and indicate it says, have you submitted a report in EVP? Yes or no? Um, and let me pull this up to show everybody what it should look like. So this is what the poll will look like. Have you submitted the report in EVP? Yes or no? I'm going to say yes and submit. And then once I do that, it will show the responses. And in the chat, we'll be able to see um, the running response total. So we've got 12 responses so far, and a little more than half of the folks said that they have not yet submitted a report in EVP. So hopefully once you do, you'll say, wow, that wasn't that hard. Um, but if you have questions, please let me or Leslie know. And Leslie, if you don't mind, I think everybody probably does have our email addresses, but if you could put that in the chat for folks that might be helpful to somebody. I just want to touch a little bit on the certification process. It's called the Statewide Uniform Certification, and it means hub certification. Once upon a time, if somebody wanted to get hub certified, they had to go to City of Raleigh and certify with them. If they wanted to work with Durham, they would have to go and get certified with Durham. And if they wanted to work with Greenville, they would have to go separately and get certified there. So they would have to go to all these places to get certified. It was a lot of time that was involved with it. And a general statute was drafted. The criteria of certification was identified and what the definition was, and the responsibility for certifications came to the Department of Administration and specifically the hub office. So now those local governments don't have to do the certification anymore, and the vendors don't have to go multiple places to get certified. So they can just come to the hub office and get certified, and then they'll be countable everywhere in the state. So the certification lasts for 4 years, and there's an optional 4-year renewal. They get notified when their 4 years is coming up for expiration, so that they can come back and recertify. Takes about 45 to 90 days to get certified. There's no fee to get certified. So that should not be a barrier. It does take time to do it. People have to fill out the application. They have to gather documents that they need to upload so we can evaluate the ownership and the control. But there's no cost that we charge for that. There are some reciprocity options. So if somebody is certified in another state that we recognize as a valid certification, or they're certified in North Carolina with DOT, they have a lot easier time getting certified as a hub. There's a lot less documentation that they have to provide. There are 3 basic steps they have to go through to get certified. They have to register an EVP. They have to complete the statewide uniform certification application. That's an EVP. And they have to upload their required documents in EVP. Prior to last July, the only part of that was online was the EVP registration. And then they had to email us stuff or fax it. And now they don't have to do that. They can fill it out all online, and they can upload it online. We do recognize that even prior to Hurricane Helene, there were some communities that may not have great high-speed internet access. So that could be a challenge for some folks in those communities. So they do still have the ability to send us things, the information in another way. They do still have to do at least a portion of it in EVP, the registration and the application. But the uploading of the documents, if they're able to fax it to us or email it to us, then we could upload those documents for them. So if somebody is saying, I'm from a rural community, or we were hit hard by Helene, and yeah, I want to get hub certified, but wow, this is really challenging. There are some alternatives if they don't have high-speed internet. access capability. I'm not saying that it's going to be necessarily easy. If you don't have a internet, you might not have the ability to fax something. But if you have a scanner and email, that should be sufficient to scan your documents and email them over to us. You may have to do it a little bit at a time, hopefully all at once in one email, so we don't have to gather them together and put them all together. But it is possible to do it. Okay, so why do hubs need to be certified? Because according to 143, General Statute 143, 128.4E, only businesses certified in accordance with the section shall be considered by state departments, agencies, and institutions and public subdivisions of the state as historically underutilized businesses for minority business participation purposes under this chapter. That's a little bit of a mouthful, but it basically says in order to count them, they have to be hub certified. There are some support programs that are only available to certified firms. And then vendors, those firms can get assistance. We have a number of YouTube recordings that they can watch. We have a number of trainings that we do that people can attend, they can register for and attend, or they can contact us. They can call our number, or they can email us at this email address. And that phone number is staffed by certification members of our certification team, and members of our certification team access this email. So they're the ones who receive those. How to find hub vendors, going to go through this kind of quickly. If you go to EVP and you select browse vendors, there's the vendor search. We highly recommend that you would immediately say under hub certification status, certified. And you could, if you're looking for a particular trade, you could put that in the vendor name and just search based on that. I do not recommend using this field that just says search and doesn't have a title over it. It's a really, really powerful wildcard search, and it will search for whatever you put there anywhere in the profile for the vendor, but it will override anything else you put in there. So if you put paint in this search field and you select hub vendors, it's going to give you paint anywhere in the company name, regardless of whether they're hub certified or not. And it will tell you, yeah, they're hub certified, but if you only wanted hub certified firms, that means you have to do a little bit of extra work to filter out the ones that are not certified. And this vendor status field is not related to hub certification at all. It's related to e-procurement or EVP. So it's not something that you want to use if you're looking specifically for hub vendors. There are advanced, so you want to use the hub certification status. You can search for NCSBE status, and our recommendation is not to use those two fields. The advanced search, if you want to access that, you would click on the little triangle, which this is an older screenshot. So that little triangle over there is now right next to the words advanced search. But you click on the little triangle and it opens up a whole nother set of fields, a lot more fields than just the basic search. Sometimes the basic search is all you need. But if you want to get more specific, like I just want it in, the counties around me, you could do that. Or if you say, I want to look for a particular commodity code or construction code or contractor service, you could do that. I would recommend that if you're doing commodity codes, don't look for a whole broad set of commodity codes, especially if you're like, I got these 13 things that I need to look for. They're all different. I'm just going to look for them all at once. I would not recommend looking for them all at once. I would recommend doing separate searches with each individual commodity code, because the commodity code is not identified in the search results or the export. So you would be kind of taking a guess as to which commodity code was associated with the vendor if you used multiple commodity codes. If they're all related and they're all in the same category, like the same commodity code family, that might not be as big of a deal. But if they're wildly different, you don't want to do that. Um, so you can search by location, commodity codes, contractor. There is a bit of a keyword search, but uh, I would say that the vendor name is probably your best option for keyword search, but uh, it might be easier to show it than to describe it. Once you do a search, it'll give you a result that looks like this in this larger image here with the name, main contact, the email, phone number, all of that. The search that I did to get this was I put data in the vendor name and certified for certification status. So it came up with all the Hub certified firms that have data anywhere in their name. Um, and if I clicked on one of the names, it would take me to their individual profile. And you could look through a number of things in here. It does list all their commodity codes, their construction codes, and their contractor services if they selected any of those. And it will indicate their hub status, particularly when their certification started and when it expires. You can see that on there. That will show up in the export if you decide to. You can't export from here, but if you were on this page, if you clicked export to Excel, you'll get all of this information in addition to certification start and end dates and any information they put in there about contractor services. At this point, you cannot pull down their commodity codes into that vendor search and that export. We are requesting that, and we're still working on trying to work through how to make that happen. There's just tons and tons of data in EVP now with expanded 6-digit commodity codes. So it's a lot more information that would have to be downloaded. So we're still working on that. Again, that's what the profile looks like. You can post opportunities on the Hub Office website if you are using EVP. And somebody said, is there a way to download a list of all Hub certified vendors, or is that too voluminous? Yes, you can do that. And basically what I would do is if I would come back to the basic search and I would just select certified under Hub certification status and not enter anything else in, and then hit search. And it'll take a second or two, but it'll bring up, hey, there's 7,000 some records, and it will list all of them. And you could hit export, and it would give you all of those vendors. We had mentioned before that the Hub file download now includes the EVP company number rather than the tax ID. We are working to include that company number on the export. It's not necessarily going to make life easier for folks who used to depend on the tax ID to update their status in their Link system or their SunPack system, but it is a way that you can see, hey, this is the company code for this vendor. Let's see, somebody said, or do it in EVP under vendor management. Yes, you could do that in EVP under vendor management if you have access to it. I just find it simpler I'm just more comfortable, and I use the public search more than I do the internal. You logged into EVP, now I'll see the vendor management screen. I just find it easier to use the public search than the internal one. So let's get back over here. Solicitations. If you post something in EVP and it's going to be publicly posted on EVP, it will get to the Hub Office's solicitation dashboard. So you don't have to enter it in EVP and then again in the Hub solicitation dashboard. Prior to a year ago, you did have to do that, but thankfully you don't have to do that anymore. All the data that there's different amounts of data that's put in EVP versus the Hub form. The Hub form actually asks for more information than shows up in EVP. So some of the information might not look exactly the same, but it transfers over from EVP to the solicitation dashboard. We are working to see if we can get a like a flag in EVP that would say this is disaster related, because we do have that on our form. If like a prime came in or a local government that doesn't use EVP, if they came into the hub dashboard, they can say, yes, this is a disaster related opportunity. EVP users don't really have that capability built into EVP right now. However, if you are posting a solicitation in EVP and you know it is disaster related, you can go ahead and submit it in EVP. We'll get it. But if you send us an email, we can change that flag on our side so that it will say, yes, that's a disaster related opportunity. And it will be able to be filtered at that way. We're actually working on trying to get a dashboard that will just show the disaster opportunities. Right now, when I looked at it yesterday, there were a little under 20 opportunities that were disaster related. And a lot of vendors are interested in helping and supporting Western North Carolina following Hurricane Helene. So they are looking for those opportunities and those ways to do that. So that's one way that they're able to search. I don't know all the ways that people can find the any opportunities that are out there for disaster related items. If somebody knows of a different place that people post those and they want to let us know, that would be fantastic. It's not a requirement, but anyway, it is possible for primes to submit solicitations, and anybody who does not want to go through EVP can post it on our website. We do ask for a minimum of 12 days between when the bid is due and when it's actually posted. So not when you post it, but when we're able to get it on there. We ask for 2 business days for us to review it, get any corrections that are needed, and get it up there. Normally, if somebody sent us a solicitation and it had 5 days between when they sent it to us and when the bid was due, we would send a nice email back saying thank you for submitting your submission. However, vendors need time to recognize that an opportunity is out there and assess whether it's appropriate for them to bid on it. However, if it is a disaster related issue, let us know that. And if you say yes on the form that it's disaster, or you email us and say this is a disaster opportunity, we will not worry about denying it because it didn't have enough days. It may mean that vendors aren't able to see it and respond to it, but we understand the urgency of the situation at this point. So we're saying if you send it to us and it's disaster related, we're going to post it even if it didn't have 10 days notice. Okay, and this is what it looks like on here. There is the disaster related item there. If you clicked on that, you would be able to select yes or no. If you don't care about disaster at all, you don't want to deal with anything disaster, you can say no, and it'll show you the 380 plus things that are non-disaster related. It's usually mostly useful if you are looking for disaster related, but then it'll show whatever projects are available given that filter. And if you used one of the other filters, it would show you those it would be similar. And you would select the solicitation that you want, click show opportunity, and it'll show you what's there. And the reason that I'm pointing this out is if you have a posting up here, we recommend you actually go to this, find your solicitation, and you take a screenshot of it or print it out. So you keep it for your records, because once the bid date goes away, it does not show up on this dashboard anymore. And we do not have the capability to go back and pull it later on in this way. It would still show up in our SharePoint list that says, hey, these are all the opportunities that we received, but it wouldn't show this that says it was actually out there, and vendors would see it like this. There is a way that you can click on the opportunity report if you really want to. And you can see the total number of postings out there. And you can see for your organization, you can scroll through the organizations to find it and see how many opportunities you have currently posted. When we looked at this, City of Raleigh had the most at 23 opportunities at the time. And there were in Raleigh, it wasn't City of Raleigh, but the projects located in Raleigh, there were 92 of those, and it would list all those numbers for those cities or for those organizations. And you can see how many solicitations are out there by the different types and how many are disaster related or not. We use this a lot in our weekly reports to our executive leadership so they can see, yeah, hey, this is a lot of opportunities that are posted out there. And a lot of them are construction and a lot of them are goods and services. And here's some of these other types that people ask about. So this might be kind of an abrupt stop, but that's the end of the slides that we had. So if you need us, here's our main phone number. We've put our emails, direct emails in the chat, but you can also email us at doa.hub.reporting@doa.nc.gov. And thank you for participating today.